Hello and welcome to Inside Rugby. My name is Mark. I'm a Kiwi rugby fan living here in beautiful Cancun, Mexico. And in this video I'm going to talk about the upcoming game this Sunday between South Africa and Tonga. So welcome to the channel. If you haven't been here before, it's great to have you with us. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you like my content, and stick around because my intention now with this channel is to grow the channel and talk about rugby from all points of perspectives across the world. So after the Rugby World Cup, I'll be evolving this channel into all rugby news and covering women's rugby as well. So lots of exciting things coming up in the future. But now it's Rugby World Cup time and we've got another host of games this weekend. One that caught my eye is the game between South Africa and Tonga. Not because I thought there's a result in doubt here, but I thought that it'd be really interesting to see what South African team gets put out against Tonga and what Jacques Nienaber is trying to do with his combination. So I'm going to go through what I think about this game in this video. So coming into this year's tournament, I think there was a lot of expectation around the Pacific Island nations and how they were going to perform, and I think Tonga and Samoa are the two that haven't lived up to the hype that was surrounding those two teams, that's for sure, in this particular tournament, whilst Fiji has gone on and so far done a very, very good job. Now looking at Tonga, they've conceded over 100 points in their first two games in this tournament, and for their head coach Kefu, that will be a worrying sign that their defence is just not holding up against these top teams in world rugby. And of course they've had a couple of tough games to start off their campaign, with games against Ireland and Scotland. And also in both of those games, as you can see from the scores here, they haven't scored more than 16 or 17 points. So getting points on the board has also been another challenge for Tonga, in getting ball through hand and being accurate when it comes to keeping the scoreboard ticking over. So it's going to be interesting to see what they can do against this very strong South African team today. On the other hand, South Africa's been playing very well, and of course we had that epic encounter between Ireland and South Africa that was, well, touch and go, could have gone down to the last minute. And today's selection for the South African team, I think, reflects that. And I think it's a really, really interesting team that South Africa is putting on the field against Tonga this weekend. And I want to go through the team now and talk about that. Now, I don't think there's any doubt on who's going to win this game between the Springboks and Tonga, but it's going to be interesting to see how this particular selection of Jacques Nienaber's plays out, because I'm quite excited by this group of players that are going to play against Tonga. So let's have a look at the Springboks team and see how they line up. And first of all, we start off in the forwards. In the front row for the Springboks is going to be Oxner Shea, it's going to be Dion Fourie, and it's going to be Vincent Coe. And of course the Springboks are definitely missing Malcolm Marx. We saw that in the Irish game, both in the line out throws and in the scrummaging and in the breakdown, but I'm sure Dion Fourie is going to do the best he can to make up that set. And I think the Springboks have been getting used to playing the system now without Malcolm Marx in the mix, and that's something they've had to adjust to as they go through the trajectory of this tournament. So I think this game against Tonga is going to be very important for the Springboks from that perspective, to get that new system working within the Springbok unit before they head into the critical stages of this year's Rugby World Cup. Then we have a look at the locks for the Springboks, and we've got Etzebeth and Ori coming in here, two very good locks of course, and surely going to get South Africa a lot of clean ball from set piece play. Looking at the flankers in this game, and of course we've got Captain Courageous Sia Khaleesi, and on the other flank we've got Dwayne Vermeulen, which is an interesting one coming in on the flank, but he plays great there as well, so don't expect the Springboks to lose anything at all with Vermeulen on the flank. And then at number 8 we've got Jasper Wiese, so a very strong pack there for the Springboks. And having a look at their reserve forwards, they've got Van Staden, Kitsoff, Nyakane, Mostert and Quagga Smith. So a strong pack indeed for the Springboks, a lot of mobility there, so going to be looking at playing this game at pace, I'm sure. But I'm sure the Springboks are going to be focusing on their accuracy and making sure, pretty much like what the All Blacks did against Italy, making sure they can execute their game plan and put in a really, really good performance against Tonga. Now let's move on to the backs for South Africa, and this is where the excitement is for me. We're going to see Handre Pollard for the first time in the South African backline at this year's Rugby World Cup. And inside him we've got Cobus Reinach at halfback. I like the way this guy plays. He brings another dimension to the Springbok backline. He's very, very good around the ruck, and he's also fast. And of course he scored those 3 tries against Romania. Then we've got Handre Pollard coming back from that injury, so I'm sure that it's going to be interesting to give him some game time. Manny Lebok is on the bench today, so I expect him to come on at some stage, but I expect us to see a good 60 minutes or so out of Handre Pollard today. He may even go longer, and that'll be really, really interesting to see how he clicks back into this team, particularly getting them moving around the park. And I think that's going to be one of the really interesting factors for me, because Manny Lebok's been doing a really good job of that, and now the South Africans are bringing Pollard back in. So I guess that's one of the questions to be answered today with the Springbok team on Sunday, whether or not Pollard's going to just keep that role going. I'm sure he will with his experience and all the rest of it, but it's just going to be good to see how different it may be to what Manny Lebok does. Now the next thing that interests me about the South African team that's playing on Sunday is the centre pairing of Esterhuizen and Canan Moodie. This is really exciting for me, and I'm going to be watching how they can get on from an offensive and defensive point of view, because I think from an offensive point of view they bring something really different. Of course, Andre the Giant has his big body frame to be able to break through this Tongan line, and Canan Moodie brings his fleet of foot, speed, and just all-round brilliance that I think this guy is as a rugby player. So this is a really interesting combination for me, and I wouldn't be surprised if Jacques Nienaber is looking at these two as a potential for their A team, because I just think they bring a completely different dimension to Zealander and Jesse Kriel. Let me know what you think of that. Do you think this is a bit of a test for these guys to see how they go? Because I think it's a really interesting pairing in the centres. And then the next thing that excites me about the Springboks team to play Tonga on Sunday is their wing pairing of Mapimpi and Grant Williams. I love to see Grant Williams playing in this year's Rugby World Cup, and he's going to get another opportunity to play on the wing this weekend. And I think that's going to bode well for South Africa's chances to score a lot of tries out wide this weekend. Then we've got Willie Leroux at fullback. So it's a really, really good backline for the Springboks. There's got a lot of good kicking options there as well. And Handre Pollard, of course, the Springboks will be wanting to see him kick a high percentage of conversions and penalty kicks in this game, because that's one of the areas we all know that the Springboks have been struggling a little bit so far in this year's Rugby World Cup. So it's going to be interesting to see how much kickball they do and how much they go through the hands, because I think Jacques Nienaber wants to see the Springboks play a more open game, and they've definitely got a team that can execute that strategy this weekend. A lot of pace in this team out wide, and I'm sure the forwards are going to be able to secure a lot of ball to get the Springboks moving forward. So for the Springboks coming off the bench, they've got Hendrikse, Kriel and Manny Lebok. So there we go, they can plug the gaps pretty easily there, and it's going to be interesting to see when Jacques Nienaber brings those 3 guys on the field. So I think this team can easily put 50 points on Tonga on Sunday, and I'd be expecting to see the Springboks play a very expansive and open, fast-paced game once they get the structures in place and they're dominating in the forwards. I think that's the way the Springboks are going to go with this game. They're going to look for that forward domination early on in that first 15 minutes, and then they're going to give their backs an opportunity to open up the floodgates, and I think we're going to see that from this Springboks team. So what can Tonga do, and what team have they put on the field for the game this weekend? Well, I don't think Tonga can do a lot to win this game, but I think they've got to play better than they have in their first 2 games to get a little bit more credibility out of this year's Rugby World Cup. The squad themselves seem to be disappointed with the way they've played, and I think Kefu, their Australian Tongan coach, will be looking for a better performance against the Springboks, particularly in their defence, and trying to keep the scoreboard a little bit lower than what they've had against Ireland and Scotland. So let's have a look at the Tongan team, starting off in the forwards. And in the front row they've got Fiziaho, Nagamao and Taumafina. And I think Ben Taumafina is one of my favourite players in this year's Rugby World Cup. He's over 150 kilos, And if you watch him going throughout the game, he's everywhere in the play. He scored a try in his last game for Tonga, and he's just an absolutely brilliant rugby player, carrying that weight around for pretty much most of the game. And if you watch him in the 60th minute, he's still going as hard as he was in the first 5 minutes. So he's definitely one of my favourites in this Tongan team. Now, are Tonga front row going to be able to take it to South Africa? I think they're going to struggle technically. They are big boys, of course, but this game of rugby at this level, you need to have the technical skills, and I think that's where Tonga is going to be let down in the scrummaging. So watch out for that as the South Africans try to dominate in the set pieces. And then having a look at the Tongan locks, we've got Fifita and Lucy, two big boys. But again, as I've been saying in my videos, it's no longer good in rugby just to have big boys. You've got to have big boys that have got the skill sets and can execute, and also have got the discipline. And I think this might be another issue for Tonga in this game. As the game goes on, I think they're going to get tired, they're going to get lazy, and they're going to start making mistakes that give away penalties. And I think that's going to be another area of this game that South Africa is going to be able to capitalise. But so looking at the back three for Tonga in the forwards, and we've got Halafanua, Talatai and Paia, and that's a really good back three, and I think these guys are going to be big around the field. I think they're going to give a good account of themselves in the breakdown, but I think the South Africans are just going to be too fast and too big for them in the breakdown. Again, discipline going to be a big thing from these three. So a good pack for Tonga. I think they're going to run out of steam in the second half. I think South Africa is going to dominate after the first 10 or 15 minutes. And I think Tonga is going to find themselves on the back foot. I think I've also got some concerns around their line out. Their line out's been struggling in previous games, and that's an area that I think South Africa is going to dominate in this particular game. Okay, let's have a look at the Tongan backline and see what they're going to bring to this game. And at halfback, we've got Pulu. He's been playing pretty well in this tournament so far. William Havili, I think he's been the star of their backline in terms of consistency, and he's got a very good kicking game. He's good at kicking goals. So their percentage of goal kicking when they do get an opportunity in this game should be good with William Havili. And then in the centres we've got Aki and Fikitoa. And those are two guys that can bring a lot of opportunity, but I haven't been very impressed with Malachi Fikitoa in this tournament so far. I think he's been a little bit indecisive and also inconsistent. So he's going to have a big game up against Esterhuizen and also Moody. And expect Fikitoa to put some big hits on. He did that very well in their last game, and he's going to have to bring that consistency to this game. And I'm not just saying this for Fikitoa, I think it's across the whole Tongan team. Their consistency in defence has been one of their issues. So they might put on some big hits and they look pretty impressive, but to be able to do that for 80 minutes and keep a team out of your line is another story altogether, and that's something that Tonga has been lacking at this year's Rugby World Cup. Looking at the Tongan back three in the backs for this game, Tutadavuki, Inesi and Piatau are their back three. And again, they've got a lot of potential here with power and speed, but how much clean ball are these guys going to get? And I think Piatau is going to be under some pressure with his kicking. So watch out for that from the Tongan backs. So I think this Tongan back group is going to struggle against the South Africans. They're going to have to do a lot of defence. And I think they're going to get pretty tired, particularly in that last 20 minutes of... Now the Tongan reserves, both in the forwards and the backs, are fairly comprehensive. They've got some good coverage there. Coleman coming on in the forwards will be a good reserve for them. But I think, again, they're not going to match up with the Springboks reserves. And this is where the 80 minutes of the game is going to be telling for Tonga. So I think it's going to be a very easy win for the Springboks on Sunday. I think it's an important game for the Springboks as Jacques Nienaber and the group try and bring some different combinations together. And as he's talked about in the press conferences, just iron out some of those issues that they thought they had against the Irish team. So it's going to be about accuracy. It's going to be about execution for Springboks this weekend, making sure that they gel together as a combination, and obviously giving Handre Pollard good game time to get himself back into the combinations in this team. It's going to be interesting to see how this forward pack goes, and I am excited in the back line with Esterhuizen and Moody coming in the centres. I think that's going to add another dimension to the Springboks group, and expect to see those two guys in particular make some very good damaging runs through the Tongan defence. So there you go, there's my thoughts around the upcoming game tomorrow in Marseille between South Africa and Tonga. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think South Africa's going to win this one easily, or do you think Tonga is going to show us something they haven't shown us so far at this year's Rugby World Cup? I'd be interested to hear from you. It's an important Pool B game, of course, and South Africa is expecting the win, and Tonga needs to have a win, so they'll be putting everything out on the field, I'm sure, in Marseille. Okay, well that's it for me. Make sure that you keep enjoying the Rugby World Cup. I'm going to be continuing making videos, previews and reviews of these games as we go forward this weekend. I'm just about to head off to watch Argentina play Chile. It's going to be an interesting game as well, and I'll see you later on. Until then, stay well, stay safe everyone, and keep enjoying the Rugby World Cup from France. Bye for now.